Hello, New Mexico, and welcome to another episode of Around the Roundhouse, a podcast featuring the policies, politics, and personalities of the land of enchantment. I'm your host, Daniel Chacón. Our guest this week is Tina Cordova, a longtime advocate for the plight of New Mexico's so-called downwinders, or people impacted by the nuclear fallout from the Trinity bomb test site during World War II. This week actually marks the 81st anniversary of the Trinity Test, which is the first time a nuclear bomb was ever tested, and it happened right here in New Mexico. The anniversary also comes as U.S. Representative Gabe Vasquez and other members of Congress push to expand the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. Known as RECA, it began offering compensation to Trinity Test downwinders in New Mexico for the first time only last year. Ms. Cordova is a native New Mexican who has been recognized for her many years of advocacy. And as we say here in northern New Mexico, she's como la gente. So I'm honored to have her as our guest. Ms. Cordova, thank you for being with us today.
I appreciate you inviting me, Danielle, to participate with you on this, the actual 81st anniversary of the Trinity bomb. It's great to be with you.
Thank you so much. I know that you and I have had conversations in the past, so muchísimas gracias. I thought we'd start things off by, noting that you've dedicated a big part of your life to advocating for and supporting downwinders. Help our viewers and listeners understand your motivation. What was the genesis of your involvement?
Well, the late Fred Tyler, who's from Tularosa like I am, wrote a letter to the editor of the local newspaper in Alamogordo. And my grandmother used to save the newspapers for me. And when I would go down, I would pick up a stack of them, bring them back, and I would read through them to sort of keep abreast of what was going on in my little community. And I read his letter to the editor. And essentially what he said was, I've been living away for over 30 years. I've had a career away, and I'm back, and everybody is sick and dying. And his mother had just died after having multiple cancers. And his question was, when are we going to hold the government accountable for what they did to us? And so I contacted him right away and I said, you know what, Fred, I've always believed this to be true. I've kept an unofficial file on everything that I can find around the harm that was done to us. I'm a scientist by education. And I said, and I know we were harmed by the bomb at Trinity. At this time, I had already had cancer myself. And so many of my family members and the people I loved in my little community had cancer. And so for me, it was not a stretch to say, let's start an organization. That was 21 years ago now. And I said, Fred, if we don't do it, it's never going to get done. And I truly, truly believe now, looking back on it, this is my life's work. I am a successful businesswoman, and I've been recognized for that. But the work that I do around bringing attention to the negative health effects suffered by the people of New Mexico as a result of being overexposed to radiation is my life's work, and it was what I was meant to do. And so,
As I was preparing for today's interview, I kind of thought, I wonder if anyone has ever called you like New Mexico's Aaron Brockovich.
well, people do compare me to her from time to time, but let me tell you the difference between Erin Brockovich and the work that I've done. She worked on a project where they were suing industry, a for-profit organization. And, our work has been to get the government, the largest power structure in the world, to acknowledge the harm that they did to the people of New Mexico when they tested that bomb. And so there's quite a big difference. I often say to members of Congress, if we could sue the US government in a civil court, we wouldn't be begging for $100,000. We would be receiving millions of dollars in reparations for the harm that was done. And so there is a difference, but I enjoy being compared to her.
As you indicated earlier, you co-founded the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium with the late Fred Tyler in 2005. Describe the organization's mission and has it achieved its goals?
Well, first of all, when we began, our only mission was to bring attention to the negative health effects, but we quickly learned about the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act and that they were taking care of downwinders from other places. And we were the first people exposed to radiation any place in the world as a result of a test, a bomb. And we thought to ourselves immediately, why is it that we have been conspicuously left out of this fund set up to take care of downwinders? And so in the beginning, I remember the very first town hall meeting we ever held. We really just wanted to give people a safe place to come and share what they were experiencing, what illnesses they had, what they remembered if they were alive at the time of the blast, just a safe place to come together and have those discussions. And early on, I realized there was a lot more to this. I thought I had a little bit of an understanding, but I realized early on, this is much bigger than anything I ever expected. And so, very quickly, we expanded our mission to include fighting for compensation, fighting for, acknowledgement that we deserved. And it's grown in ways I can't even describe. Just as a matter of fact, I will be traveling to the United Nations at the end of August. I was recently invited to go there on the anti-testing day that they hold annually to speak to the General Assembly of the United Nations and tell them this history. And so, it's grown in ways I could never have imagined over the last 21 years.
May I ask you why it took so long for New Mexico to be included in RICA?
I can only speculate based on the things that I know. And I really do believe that, because I tell people all the time, in 1990, when they established RICA, we had two US senators, just like the other states that were included, states like Arizona, Nevada, Utah. We had two US senators representing us. And where were they? And I always say, it must have been something like, give us all the money that you can for our two nuclear labs. And I think it was really difficult to then hold out the other hand and say, and oh, by the way, we need to bring something back also for all the people that are being harmed in the process. And so I don't think there was, I just don't think there was any desire to make it known to people, not just in New Mexico, but across the nation, that there had been harm done. And so I think that was probably a big part of it. I think also it's a lot easier to admit that you were testing nuclear devices at the time that they were doing it in Nevada, because other countries were doing it also. But it was at the time of Trinity, nobody was doing it. It was the first time ever. And so I think that's also a little bit hard to sort of reconcile.
May I ask you about the level of benefits that New Mexicans have received since New Mexico was included?
So we were included 1 year ago,
Mhm.
and thousands of people have applied for the compensation. I think we're up to over 4,000 people from New Mexico, which would amount to $400 million. A number of those applications are pending. I think they've paid out somewhere around 500 claims, which is $50 million. So this is significant. The U.S. Department of Justice has recently admitted that they believe there could be as many as 50,000 qualified claimants in New Mexico, and that would be $5 billion. So we want to make sure that every single person out there who qualifies is given an opportunity to apply for the compensation and receive it, because while $100,000 may not seem like a lot of money to some, to others, it's life-changing. I hear from those people all the time. And so, we're doing everything we can to assist people and to make sure that people can apply and get the compensation they deserve.
Given that it is the government, I would imagine that it's somewhat cumbersome to apply.
Well, the application can be cumbersome in some cases. So you can apply on behalf of yourself if you meet the criteria. And basically, it's that you have to prove you lived here for 1 year between 1944 and 1962.
Okay.
And you have one of the 19 compensable cancers. As an example, I will qualify. I haven't filed a claim yet, but I had thyroid cancer. That's a compensable cancer. You can apply on behalf of a deceased spouse, so a husband or a wife, a deceased child, a deceased parent, or a deceased grandparent. You can imagine how complicated it gets to apply on behalf of a deceased grandparent. You
Mhm.
have to find records. So birth certificates, death certificates, if they were married and their spouse is gone, because that spouse would have been the beneficiary, you have to get death certificates, birth certificates, death certificates for the spouse. And then you have to account for all the children and grandchildren. And so it can be very complicated. What I'm telling everybody right now is not to be discouraged. It's amazing the things that can be done by the library systems. Our library systems in New Mexico, many of them are equipped to help you find genealogy records, census records. We used to keep what are called city directories. The city directories for those years, 44 through 62, oftentimes will have your family listed as living in New Mexico. So the libraries have been very helpful. The New Mexico Department of Health is the keeper of a lot of the documents you need, birth certificates, death certificates, et cetera. The thing that's a little more complicated is getting health records. If you have a death certificate that lists an actual compensable cancer, then that's all you need. But if you don't have that, you have to go get medical records. And sometimes, a treating physician can write a letter on your behalf if the medical records aren't available. So it can be cumbersome, but they've only rejected 3 claims so far, which is very encouraging. They've approved over 500 and only rejected 3. And when they reject your claim, you actually have 2 more opportunities. And then if you exhaust all 3 opportunities, then you can't apply. Our congressional offices also are helping people when it's difficult for them to get the documents that they need, especially if they're documents that are kept by the government. And so don't be discouraged. Seek us out. We'll help you. We have volunteers all across the state who are helping people.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you, is there sort of a go-to that someone can just pick up the phone, or a website that they can, seek resources to kind of navigate that process?
Well, first of all, I would tell anyone who's interested to go to our website first, which is trinitydownwinders.com. Trinitydownwinders.com. Do not confuse it with just downwinders.com, because bad actors have come into our state to try and get a piece of the billions of dollars they expect will come to New Mexicans. And one of them has set up a website called downwinders.com. And they are telling people things that are not true, like they can guarantee results, they can get you to the front of the line. Just this week, I got a call from a lady who said she hired an attorney who solicited her a year ago. And she said, I finally got my benefits this week, and they did keep part of the claim. And you don't have to do that. There's no reason to hire an attorney or any agency that says they're going to help you. The TBDC, our organization, has volunteers from one end of the state to the other, and every day new people are joining to help. And we're going to help everybody that needs help. So people can go to our website. They can also call my office. My assistant has become an expert on this. Her name is Michelle. The phone number is 505-897-6787. 505-897-6787, and we'll help. We'll find someone to help you, or we'll help you ourselves.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for providing that information. I know that for anyone who would be interested, that'll be a good resource to start. Ms. Cordova, we wrote this week about the potential expansion of RICA. Exactly what would the proposal do, and how would it benefit New Mexicans?
Well, first of all, there are a lot of places that are left out of RICA. When they passed the bill last year, many places were left out that should have been included. And one of the things I said during the press briefing this week was, we will not be satisfied until we see justice for all, not just for a few, but justice for all. So places like Guam, we've become very close friends with our sisters and brothers in the Pacific Islands who suffered the same fate. And so the people of Guam need to be included. All of Arizona, all of Nevada, Colorado, Montana, those places were all left out. They all need to be included. They all were exposed to radiation from the above ground testing that took place at the Nevada test site. So number one, there's that. Number two, when RICA was established in 1990, those people who were included had 35 years to apply for compensation. And what they essentially gave us was 2.5 years. And I keep saying, that's not justice. Give one group of people 35 years and give us 2.5 years. And what are we going to say to the man or the woman that develops cancer in January of 2028? Because you can apply up to December 31st of 2027. So this new bill would expand it for an additional 15 years, which is going to be necessary, especially when it's difficult to get records because you've been waiting 80 years. It would also add additional cancers that are not covered. As an example, prostate cancer isn't covered right now. Prostate cancer is the leading cause of cancer in men in New Mexico. And we know it's radiogenic, and it was left out. Bone cancer, we concentrate some radioactive isotopes in our bones, and it's not included. So there's a number of cancers that will be added that are not included now. It would extend the qualification period past 1962 to 1992. And I always say 1962 was the last year they did above ground testing, but that's just the beginning of the exposure. The radioactive isotopes that are produced by these blasts have very long half-lives. And so it was just the beginning of the exposure. And we think actually there should be no end date, but we'll take 1992 for the time being. It would increase the compensation from 100,000 to 150,000. So there's a number of really good items that they've expanded, and all things that we support. And the good thing is too, Danielle, let me just say this much. We're the only state, I'm very proud of this, where we have 100% support, full support from all 5 members of Congress serving New Mexico in DC. All 3 representatives and both senators. No other state can say that. We're the only state that can say that.
Let me ask you, I mean, I know it's probably hard to say, but what are the odds of this proposal getting through?
Well, RECA ended in 2024. It expired, it sunset in 2024, and everybody thought that's the end. This will never happen. As a matter of fact, I had people calling me and they were emotional and they were upset and they said, it's over. It's never going to happen for us. And I continue to give the pep talk. We're not in a better place or a worse place than we were a year ago. And we will continue to fight. We will not give up this fight. We have everything to gain and nothing to lose. And we will continue to fight. And lo and behold, and I would always say the stars are going to align for us someday. Lo and behold, in July of 2025, after RECA had sunset, we got the bill added to, the reconciliation bill, and everybody was overjoyed. I can only say this much. This is a nonpartisan issue. And we passed a bill very similar to this by an overwhelming vote in the US Senate in 2024, a vote of 69-30, which never happens. And so knowing those things, I have great hope for this bill. I think a lot of Republican members of Congress that did not support in the past will see how much good it's done for people in New Mexico, Idaho, the rest of Utah that was added. I think they'll see that this has been meaningful, that it counts. And I think that they'll join with us to deliver justice to the people who have been so horribly affected by this legacy.
As you noted, it was part of the reconciliation bill, which is also known as the One Big Beautiful Bill, which unfortunately, in some folks' view, it came with cuts to social service programs that so many New Mexicans rely on. And I wanted to ask how you felt about that.
Well, that was very unfortunate, actually. That was a big downside of the RECA expansion being included in the One Big Beautiful Bill, because we know that while on the one hand, this is going to offer this compensation that's life-changing to some people, it can take a lot away from others. And so, that was very, very unfortunate. And I'm just hoping that with the new bill, it's a standalone bill. It may eventually get added someplace, but I'm just hoping that when this passes, it'll be a standalone passage of a bill that is meaningful and not necessarily associated with the cuts that have taken place as a result of the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Okay. Ms. Cordova, I also wanted to ask you how you feel about the development of nuclear weapons. Are they a necessary evil?
Well, I will tell you that when I started doing this work, I certainly did not start out to be an abolitionist. But after doing this work and learning everything that I have learned and meeting people all across the world who have suffered as a result of the development and testing of nuclear devices, I stand as an abolitionist these days. I think it's a gross misuse of funds to put anything else into nuclear development. We don't have a place to store the waste. Imagine that we continue developing nuclear warheads, the plutonium pits. We continue to develop nuclear energy, but we have no place to store the waste. And it wasn't that long ago, Daniela, that we were fighting here in New Mexico to make sure that they didn't bring it here to New Mexico. And
Yes.
so, I'm an abolitionist. I don't believe that we should expand any more nuclear development. New Mexico has been from the very inception, basically ground zero. They're talking about starting up uranium mining again, and we haven't cleaned up the mess we made the first go round.
Mhm.
I mean, they're talking about potentially starting mining in Canjilon, this beautiful, pristine part of our state that hasn't necessarily been yet touched by anything. I just can't even imagine. I think it's there's so much disregard for us. It's such a high level of disregard and disrespect for us because they must think that I guess they just think that we don't have the ability to stand up for ourselves. I often say these days, when they came here over 80 years ago to establish the Manhattan Project, they counted on us to be uneducated, unsophisticated, and unable to stand up for ourselves. But we're not those people today. And this nuclear renaissance that we find ourselves in, we're going through it with our eyes wide open. We know so much today, and people are standing up in record numbers against, you know, all of the things going on around us.
Okay. Ms. Cordova, as I mentioned earlier, today is actually the anniversary of the Trinity Test. You've called it the beginning of the end for tens of thousands of people. Given what you and so many other people have had to deal with, how do you mark the anniversary? Is it a sad day for you?
It's a difficult day. It's a very difficult day. I think of the many, many people who started out on this journey with me 21 years ago that aren't here, that never got to see justice. That, so many people along the way have told me if they would just come back and apologize, if they would just acknowledge what they did to us. And this is a heavy day. There's a heaviness associated with this day. And it's not just about Trinity either. Today marks the anniversary of the spill, in Church Rock, the Redwater Pond people, where we had the largest nuclear disaster ever take place. And you never hear about it, but you always hear about 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl and other places, but you never hear about, the Redwater Pond and the Church Rock spill. It's just not recognized the same way. And so there's a heaviness associated with this day, and no celebration whatsoever. But when we have our candlelight vigil on the 25th of July and we call out the names of all of our loved ones that we've lost, and long ago we decided that if the government's not going to come back, if they're not going to acknowledge these people, at least once a year in our community, their names are going to be spoken again so they're never forgotten. And that's all we can do. All we can do is continue to tell our truth, make sure people understand this history, make sure we develop our own narrative so that it's not just, the science and industry narrative that I believe has been over glorified. We have to tell the people's narrative as well. And that's what we do. And that's what we'll continue to do.
Okay. We started earlier by talking about Fred Tyler, who is, the co-founder of the consortium. What would he say to you today? What would he think of your efforts?
Oh man, I wish I could have one more conversation with Fred. Fred he would be amazed at where this started and where we've come to.
Yeah.
Uh, in the beginning, nobody wanted to hear this history. Nobody believed it. Nobody, Fred and I struggled to get even any journalist to talk to us. And now I get interviewed by journalists from all over the world. I was part of a live Instagram today with folks from back from the brink nationally. Our history is now recognized all around the world. They're going to show our documentary in Perth, Australia. It was recently screened in Amsterdam. People all around the world know this history now, and Fred would be very happy that it has grown into the movement that it has grown into. He would be very happy that people he loved and cared about are receiving compensation and acknowledgement. And I think he would be just overjoyed that we started a movement that became the delivery of acknowledgement and compensation to thousands of people in New Mexico. I feel that way. I think he would feel that way.
Okay. Well, Ms. Cordova, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Am I missing to ask you anything that you would like our viewers and listeners to know?
Well, we do have an event coming up this Sunday, but I don't know when, this is going to be released.
It'll be released tonight, so please
Perfect. Perfect. So on Sunday, the 19th, we have an interfaith reflection on the Trinity Test, led by Archbishop Wester, who happens to also be an abolitionist, in Santa Fe, beginning at 2:00 at St. Michael's High School. There'll be a list of speakers there who will touch on all sorts of subjects. Again, people can go to our website, trinitydownwinders.com, and see the flyer. And then on the 25th, we have our candlelight vigil in Tularosa. The gates will open at 7:30. You can attend and give us the name of your loved one who's passed away. We'll make a luminaria on the spot. And we light thousands of close to 1,000 luminarias right now. And we call out everyone's name. And it's a beautiful, somber event. Again, Tularosa at the Veterans Memorial Park on July 25th.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you again for spending time with us today. It's always wonderful to speak with you. And as always, thank you to our viewers and listeners for tuning into Around the Roundhouse. Join us every week as we talk to newsmakers in the political realm by subscribing to our podcast through Spotify, Apple, YouTube Music, or obviously wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest developments, including what is going to happen with this proposed expansion of RICA, follow our coverage online at santafenewmexican.com, where you can also subscribe to our political newsletter, The Roundhouse Report. Until next time, I'm Daniel Chacón, and this has been Around the Roundhouse.